Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 272 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And how are you? Happy December. It's kind of crazy we're at this point in the year already.
How do we get here already? Exactly. Canadiens, tremendous October, came back to earth in November, and now what's going to be their fate for December? Looking at the schedule, first 2 weeks of December, home games. Last 2 weeks of December, all road games. It's going to be interesting as we follow this team. But to answer your question, I'm doing great. I've not done my Christmas shopping yet. I'm envious of you, but I've got it on my list to at least start this weekend.
Yeah, well, it'll be good to get to, but on the show, it's a pretty busy show. Lots of news from this past week, lots of news from this season so far in general. So hopefully we leave enough time for you to go out and do your Christmas shopping. And all of our listeners can take us with them while they go Christmas shopping. As in this first segment, we'll get you up to date on everything Montreal Canadiens since we were last here. A few games, some roster news, prospect updates, and news from around the league. Then in segment 2, it's thrills and disappointments of the first quarter of the season. We will be diving into the disappointments, the good things, the bad things, everything in between. We'll be talking about that. I think a lot of podcasts have been doing some letter grades, but we decided let's do something a little bit different here. And then segment 3, it's a Have Your Say segment. We turn it over to our listeners, and our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, can Montembeault be an effective number one goalie for the Canadiens for the next 3 seasons? We want to hear from you. And Rick, I know our listeners love to reach out and get involved in this conversation. How can they reach out to us?
Well, I'm imagine that the Rocket Sports text line is going to be burning up this week, especially about the signing news that we're going to get to in a minute. And if you haven't sent us a text before, you are welcome to do that. Again, the Rocket Sports text line, it is 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET.
You can also follow us on social media at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. Make sure that you check out our comprehensive game previews and post-game recaps for every Montreal Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. And here's what's happened since we've been gone. Going all the way back to November the 25th, Montreal pays a visit to the Los Angeles Kings, and it was a 4-0 whooping for the Kings. Not Allen's greatest start of the season, but at the same time, I did feel Jake Allen was very much hung out to dry. Not a whole lot of support for him. Not a ton of emotion or pushback from the Montreal Canadiens in general as they get trampled. And Phoenix Copley, the goaltender for the Los Angeles Kings, he gets a shutout.
Yeah, the Canadiens weren't in this game. This was a whooping. And as you said, I think Jake Allen did what he could, but didn't get any kind of goal support. He had a great save on none other than Phil Deneau. Tremendous glove save early in third period, but later in that third period, the Moore backhand that one looked pretty ugly. The high shots were 30-18 for the Kings. All right, that tells part of the story. But I looked at high danger scoring chances. They were 16-2. For Los Angeles, 5-on-5. So a really rough game for the Montreal Canadiens against a very good Los Angeles Kings team.
And they had a few days off to reflect upon that before heading into Columbus, and Montreal wins this game 4-2. Montembeault got the start, but to be completely honest, Sam Montembeault and the Montreal Canadiens in general, I don't think played that well. I think there are a few occasions in which they got lucky with Montembeault sliding way far out of his crease, wide open net, and the Columbus Blue Jackets just not being able to finish. 2 goals apiece in that second period, and then nothing until late in the third when it was Yoel Armia who deflected a puck into the net to give the Habs a lead, and of course an empty netter added as a dagger. So not a great showing from either team, to be completely honest.
First game played for Armia since his second recall from Laval, and was the hero in this game. You're absolutely right about Sam Montembeault. He really lacked body control throughout that game. He was overplaying the puck and then putting himself way out of position for any rebounds. In the crowd in that night were 3 members of the Edmonton Oilers hockey ops staff. There was assistant general manager Brad Holland, pro scout Warren Reichel, and their goaltending scout they brought along. I don't know that they liked what they saw from Montembeault on that night.
Yeah, and I don't think we were particularly impressed either. Actually, one of my Rocket Sports Media colleagues, Gustav, and I did a live stream watch along for this game. We paid attention to Montembeault's play, and I think our consensus was if we were a member of the Edmonton Oilers in the audience, I think we were more inclined to pass on Montembeault than to want to go ahead and trade for him.
Yeah.
And this was a back-to-back. The very next day, on November the 30th, Montreal comes back home, and Florida plays a visit. And, well, Florida, with another big whooping on Montreal, 5-1 is the score for the Panthers. Not a whole lot happened, to be honest, until the third period. The Panthers did go up 1-0 in the second, but they proceeded to score 4 in the third. The lone goal for Montreal came from Kovacevic.
Yeah, and this was just waiting to happen. You just felt it through the game. The Canadiens coming back after a road trip didn't look great in the first period, kind of found their legs in the second, and then in the third there was the collapse. And the collapse was not only the Canadiens as a whole, but certainly Caden Primo giving up in total 5 goals, all on the glove side. It was tough, and it's kind of the pattern we've seen from the Canadiens, being dominated by Boston, dominated by Los Angeles, dominated by Florida, all very good teams, and then the Canadiens making up their points against Anaheim, against San Jose, against Columbus, teams at the bottom of the standings.
So the Canadiens' record currently 10-11-2. That's 22 points and 24th in the NHL. So Montreal still towards the bottom of the standings, second last in the Atlantic. Please continue to check out Habs Notepad. Habs headlines, feature articles, and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. And actually some big news in our roster section. Alex Newhook left the game in the third period against the Florida Panthers with a lower body injury. He took an awkward tumble into the net and needed help off the ice. This morning on Saturday, December the 2nd, it was announced that he'd be out for quite a while yet.
10 to 12 weeks is the estimated time that it's going to take for Alex Newhook to recover from a high ankle sprain, and you knew something was up because the way he fell awkwardly into the mesh, and his leg got caught up in it. It was ugly. He didn't look like he could put much weight on it as he was helped off. And yes, that's real bad news. 10 to 12 weeks for Newhook with this high ankle sprain.
And following the injury, the Canadiens recalled forward Mitchell Stevens, your namesake, Rick, from the Laval Rocket. He's a veteran. He spent a lot of time in the American League, 12 points in 16 games with Laval.
Yeah, I think this was a good move. He's someone who can move into the fourth line and understands his role. So rather than bringing up a young prospect, this was a good move.
And the biggest news out of this week, the Montreal Canadiens have re-signed goaltender Sam Montembeault to a 3-year extension that will pay him an average salary of $3.15 million per season. Montembeault's career stats, 3.42 goals against average, .897 save percentage. So far this season, he's got a 2.73 goals against average and a .910 save percentage within 10 games. And Rick, I think there was a mix of reactions here. We'll break this down just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that where to start on this? Well, Sam Montembeault has he is adored by the Montreal media, and I think that cheerleading along or being a press agents for Sam Montembeault, he has had help along the way in his negotiations. There's all kinds of terms talked about his season last season. I think for Sam, it was his best season in the NHL, but really a mediocre kind of season. Not to be critical, but just calling it what it is. We know that he had a really tough training camp and a tough start to the season. Wasn't looking good. Jake Allen was looking better. Was better. He had a great training camp. He had a solid start to the season. There were some even talking about maybe Primo would displace Montembeault at the beginning of the season, and that's kind of got flipped on its head since. We talked about it last week. Folks love to talk about goals saved above expected, which is an area that he he excelled at last year, and it's something that's not so sterling numbers there this year. He's at 25th. Jake Allen at about 28th. In the league, so he's average stats. But it seems like we talked about it before in the previous weeks. Elliot Friedman had said maybe it was looking like Montembeault was the target for the Edmonton Oilers, and as they followed the Canadiens around and took a look at him more closely. It seems that they were not willing to make that trade, or perhaps it was Kent Hughes that wasn't happy with the return. But in any event, with Montembeault signing that contract, signing a 3-year deal, it's unlikely that Montembeault is going to be traded, and certainly not this season. You wouldn't want to be handcuffed into that contract. If you were a Canadiens trading partner.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we do see situations where it's a sign-in trade. You'll see the signing go down and then immediately the trade. In this case, just the signing was announced. So I think it would be pretty peculiar if within the next few days we did see a trade. For Sam Montembeault, I've mentioned it a few times. I think he has surpassed my expectations a little bit since Montreal claimed him off waivers. But again, my expectations were not super, super high, and I still don't really see Sam Montembeault as someone that can be a starting goaltender or even really a 1B goaltender. I think at best he can probably come in and be a reasonable backup goalie on a good team. Maybe some short stretches he can come out and put out some good numbers. But I don't think that Sam Montembeault is even really the best goaltender on this team. You mentioned that he had a bit of a rough start and Allen was much better. Well, when you look at the matchups that they put Montembeault up against versus Allen, it's pretty apparent that Montembeault's been getting, I want to say, the easier starts for the most part. His last 3 games, Columbus, Arizona, or Anaheim, Calgary. So 3 teams not doing so well in the standings. Versus Jake Allen's last 3 starts, Los Angeles Kings, Boston Bruins, Vancouver Canucks. So when you sign Montembeault to a 3-year contract, I would expect at some point he should be the guy that would be making those more difficult starts, no?
Yeah, for sure. And maybe that's to come. But I think that many many fans have asked, why now? Why would you? There was no rush to sign Montembeault. You want to let the offers play out right up until the trade deadline. Even at the end of the season, there's still plenty of time to sign Montembeault. But we remember Kent Hughes saying that he was going to weaponize the media and use the power of the media and the fan in order to send good messages to the fan base. And it seems like Edmonton took a look at Montembeault, and we're speculating, but we know the trade didn't happen. If they had been happy, if Kent Hughes had been happy with the return, it would have happened. So maybe Edmonton backed away, and there was an opportunity for Kent Hughes to put a really positive spin on this, rather than being accused of dropping the trade, not solving his three goalie conundrum. So you line up Montembeault with three soft starts, and he looks good. He's now got a winning record this season, 273 goals against, 910, padded his stats a little bit against the lesser teams, the teams at the bottom of the standings. And now you have the opportunity, when fans are coalescing around Montembeault and a little sour on Primo and Allen, to make this big splash with the signing. Does that sound far-fetched? Maybe, but Hughes has said he is going to do these kinds of things. As an agent, you do those kinds of things. He was going to bring those techniques to the general manager position, and it all fits. Whatever they've chosen, all of this fits the scenario that's playing out.
And I guess to piggyback off of that, so if that was the case and they had him pad his stats quite a bit against those lesser teams, did that not kind of backfire a little bit in that now Sam Montembeault is making more than $3 million next season, and it's a 3-year contract? Did Montreal maybe set themselves up so that they potentially just overpaid Sam Montembeault a little bit here?
Well, I think the Canadiens are willing to overpay for a fan favorite. And that was pretty obvious. The deck, the summary in the press release, the headline is 3-year contract extension for Sam Montembeault. The deck, or the summary as we call it, the subheading, says the Quebec-born netminder has recorded a 910 save percentage in 10 games. So you parse out 10 games and start it with the Quebec-born netminder. Couldn't say that about Allen. Couldn't say that about Primo. Are you paying a premium for that? Of course you are. The Canadiens will always do that. So I think, is it a little too much for Montembeault? Yeah, probably. Based on his performance, based on his stats, definitely. But the Canadiens have cost certainty for their goaltending position for the next 3 years. There is no way that they're going to pay $3 million to Sam Montembeault and then an extra 3.85. So 3.15 for Montembeault, 3.85 for Allen, $7 million for goaltenders who really, there's no strong starter. There's no real number one goaltender. It's not going to happen. So I think that clearly sets up an opportunity where Jake Allen is going to be moved between now and the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. And like we talked about briefly, Jake Allen, I think the start of the season was phenomenal and outright won some games for the Montreal Canadiens. As things have gone along, I think he's come back down to earth and he's been a little bit more what we expect from him. And of course, going off against some of the more difficult matchups, like we mentioned, the Bostons, the LA Kings, the Tampas, in general, the Montreal Canadiens not playing very well in those games. So you see his stats start to decline quite a bit. If we wanted to compare Montembeault and Allen just a little bit here, looking at a few stats that stood out to me. Well, you look at the goals against, and of course, Montembeault's played 10 games, Allen's played 9 games. Montembeault, 27 goals against, Allen, 30 goals against. But something that kind of stood out to me, and this kind of backs up the point of Montembeault getting some of the easier starts. The Canadiens have scored 29 goals when Montembeault's in net, only 20 when Allen's in net. The goal differential being positive for 2 on Montembeault's end and negative 10 for Jake Allen. So I do think to an extent here, we have seen that Allen is been the more reliable goaltender and the guy they're willing to put out against stiffer competition. But I would like to see, okay, if you are committing to a Sam Montembeault for 3 more seasons, I certainly would like to see Sam Montembeault get more of those starts. I think that would help me better evaluate what he is, because as of yet, like I said, I've just not seen enough from Montembeault for me to consider him a really good starting goaltender in the NHL.
Yeah, and once that all is sorted out, the three-headed goalie situation has got to end, and once that ends, Sam Montembeault is going to have to take the load. That's something many people have been calling for. Is he capable of handling that? Well, we'll see. But moving him, and he's been talked about as a bargain. But now he's moved into a salary area where he's going to be compared to a Georgiev, a Samsonov, those goalies who in that salary range, even a Varlamov, who's, I think, a bargain at much less. So he's going to have to take on the tougher matchups. He's going to have to be compared to goalies in that same salary level. And I think that, well, he's always going to get favorable press, but I think fans are going to start to say, okay, wait a minute. Is he the goaltender, as some are now talking about, as too important for the future, as the future goaltender? Some of the media are talking that way. Or is he the stepping stone? Is he going to, put out a basic level of goaltending over the next 3 years until the Canadiens are able to develop one of the next prospects?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point too. And there's one last thing I personally wanted to bring up here, and you touched on it briefly. I felt like there was a lot of time to sort out the Sam Montembeault situation. I know it was just purely speculative. Maybe the Edmonton situation kind of fell through and that wasn't going to work out, even after all of what was being reported and having a lot of Edmonton scouts showing up to Montreal games. I think that Sam Montembeault did want to remain in Montreal. I think that's a fair thing for me to say. And if they wanted to re-sign him, I think they could have given it a lot more time and potentially talked him down a little bit in terms of numbers. And if there was still a chance of flipping out Sam Montembeault, well, they had all the way until the deadline to really figure that one out, no?
Yeah, as I said, the kind of he hasn't signed multi-year contracts. He talked about going year to year and not knowing, and so this wouldn't have been unusual until it waited until after the trade deadline, until it waited until after the season. That wouldn't have been unusual at all. Sam Montembeault is happy where he is. He said, if I could spend the rest of my career with the Montreal Canadiens, I would be happy. So yes, he wanted to stay here. He's let that be known. He wasn't looking forward to going elsewhere. He's comfortable. He's adored. Why would he want to move? So yes, there was opportunity for more negotiation there. On the other side was Kent Hughes thinking, oh, maybe he's going to go on a run here. Maybe he's going to, start lighting it up against tougher opponents, and is that going to be a more difficult negotiation at the? That's Well, I don't know if that would play out that way. We don't know what the goalie market's going to be like. Was he going to be in demand and then they'd have to pay more? So Kent Hughes just saw the opportunity where he had a winning record, where he had glowing stats, where there was a lot of good press about him, and sees the opportunity to sign him. That's the way I see it anyway. I should say that, we've talked about Edmonton and where they're going to take Montembeault, where they're going to take Allen, where they're going to take Primo. As we mentioned last week, the Edmonton Oilers have other options other than the Montreal Canadiens. There are other goaltenders who are performing much better than any of the Montreal Canadiens goaltenders, and at a reasonable cost. And we named some of them. James Reimer being one. I thought it was interesting this week that TVA mentioned they were all over the Charlie Lindgren story, saying, my goodness, when Charlie Lindgren was in Montreal, nobody considered that he was an NHL goaltender. We did, and we talked about it constantly. If you've listened to this podcast, we know that you've heard us say Charlie Lindgren got a raw deal in Montreal, and he went to Washington. And every December he's been terrific. This November he's been fabulous for the Capitals and one of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League. Are they paying Charlie Lindgren $3.15 million? No, they don't happen to be doing that. And he didn't get to pick his soft starts, given the injury situation in Washington. So I thought it was interesting this week that some of the media were jumping on the Charlie Lindgren train.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, too. And what a contract for Charlie Lindgren with the Washington Capitals. I believe when that was signed, it was 3 years, $1 million per year. So that's looking great. And like you said, Charlie Lindgren being absolutely phenomenal and perhaps the one that got away from the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
And before we get on to our prospect update, did you have anything else you wanted to mention about the Sam Montembeault contract? I know that, at least online, it was really a mixed reaction from Habs fans on this one. Yeah,
I think, and that's fair, that it was a mixed reaction because of I think the over-generous praise. Folks are talking about the way he played at the World Championships. Well, there were no NHL players there other than on his team. That can be kind of discounted. Talking about his season last year in glowing terms, well, kind of average. But we talked about with Marty Biron about the Canadiens goaltenders, and Marty Biron said that Sam Montembeault has improved each year that he's watched him, and expected that this would be the coming out season for Sam Montembeault. That last season he got the praise. This season he was going to catch up with the performance. So I think that's what I think we'll do for the rest of the season, is see if the media have promoted him. The Canadiens have shown their faith in Sam Montembeault. Let's see him take that. The contract situation is out of the way. No more pressure. He can play free. Let's see him earn that contract. Not that he's making that money this year, but show that he's worthy of the contract.
Yes, absolutely. And we have a few more goaltenders to talk about as we get to our prospect update.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
Each week, we like to highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week we're going to shine the spotlight on a goaltender, like I promised. One, Quentin Miller, playing for the Quebec Remparts. He was a draft pick this past year, one of the 3 goaltenders that the Montreal Canadiens took. Last season with Quebec, he was very much the backup goaltender. He put up some good numbers, 211 goals against average and a .911 save percentage throughout 20 games. And this season, as we hit December, he's already played 20 games. His number is not quite as good. Currently, the goals against average is 2.81 and save percentage of .904. But Quebec currently is the worst team in the East. They're at the very bottom of the standings, so not as strong a team as the Remparts were last season. So I think that is kind of reflected in those numbers. And as of late, I do think that Quentin Miller has struggled a little bit, sub 900 save percentage within his last 5 starts.
Yeah, I think there's it's a bit of both. The Remparts aren't the team they were last year. I don't think that, and I think Quentin Miller is learning how to be the number one goaltender, the goaltender that the team relies on, and that's a whole different situation than he was in last year. Not a winning record, and I think that he's young, he's 18, he's emotional, and he's got when you look deeper into the numbers, he's got a .500 record at home, a sub .500 record on the road. That also, very good numbers at home, 2.55 goals against, a .915 save percentage at home, but it's those away games. 328 goals against, 883 save percentage. So that's all part of learning how to be a number one goaltender for a team. And that's going to come. Again, these are goaltenders with potential. Some will meet them, some won't. Some in between. And I think there's no room for criticism in here for Quentin Miller right now. He's learning how to be a goaltender, a number one goaltender in the QMJHL.
And another goaltender that was drafted this past season's having some success as well. In this week's USCHO Division I poll, Boston College takes over the number 1 spot. And, one Jacob Fowler has been playing great for that team.
Yeah, he has. Boston College has moved up from the last week's poll. They were number 2, and they've moved up to the number 1 position, 11-2-1 record. And a lot of that is due to Jacob Fowler starting all the games there. He had a terrific week, named Hockey East Goaltender of the Week, and then named Hockey East Goaltender of the Month for the month of November. So he's been good. As I said, Quentin Miller's been learning his craft, and then over in the MHL in Russia, you have Evgeny Volokin, who's having a terrific season, 9-2-4 record in 16 games, 153 goals against, 939 save percentage, 2 shutouts. That draft where the Canadiens took 3 goaltenders, there's some real potential there in Miller, Volokin, and as I mentioned, Jacob Fowler.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jacob Fowler, great season so far overall, .927 save percentage, and 211 goals against average. So you have to be pretty happy with what he's been able to do. And like the Montreal Canadiens scouts were thinking, all Jacob Fowler ever seems to do is win, right?
That's right.
Looking at defensemen that's been doing pretty well in the NCAA the last couple of seasons, Lane Hutson was named the Hockey East Defender of the Month. So far in this early parts of the season, he has 19 points, so Lane Hutson continuing to impress.
Absolutely. And again, another Canadiens prospect honored as a player of the month for Hockey East, Lane Hutson. And we said it's December, so at the end of this month, we're going to be talking about World Juniors, and we expect that Lane Hutson's going to be the backbone of USA's World Junior team coming up at the end of the month.
And another league in which Canadiens prospect is having some success is in the OHL. Filip Mesar named the OHL Player of the Month. Really good since joining the Kitchener Rangers. In 16 games, he's put up 28 points. And speaking of the World Juniors, Filip Mesar has been included on Slovakia's preliminary roster for the World Juniors. He also played for that team last season.
Yeah, this is great news for Filip Mesar. Kind of had an adjustment season last year. We remember that he had been playing against men, then going to the OHL last year, and his results were kind of hit and miss, playing against players his own age. But this season, he's just been on fire and named, as you said, Player of the Month for the month of November. In those games in November, 10 goals, 12 assists, 22 points, and quite worthy of the Player of the Month. You mentioned that he's going to be going to the World Juniors. Just a note there, news came out this week, reported by Darren Dreger, that the IIHF has announced that neck protection, it will be mandatory for the World Junior Championship and the men's under 18 championship as well. So that'll be something new that we'll be seeing at the World Juniors.
Taking a look at the Laval Rocket from this past week, they've had a pretty light schedule going back to November the 25th. Laval visits Syracuse. They lose in the shootout 4-3. Kidney and Mishak score goals for the Laval Rocket. Their third goals of the season, actually. Jakub Dobis looked pretty strong in the net, especially in overtime. Laval failed to score in the shootout, but for the Syracuse Crunch, it was Mitchell Chaffee that scored the winner. A few days off in between. Their last game was actually last night on December the 1st as they visit Abbotsford, and their struggles against Abbotsford continue. Abbotsford wins this one 4-2, a couple goals for each team in the first, but Laval ultimately getting outshot 39-32. Abbotsford pulled ahead in the second period, and then they added an empty net at the end of the game to seal the deal.
That was Straussman in goal for Laval. First game back for Emil Heinemann after being away, having an injury, a lengthy injury. I thought he looked really good, led the team in shots on goal. He had 4 shots on goal. He was playing on the top line with Riley Kidney and Lucas Kandata. But that game, and if you stayed up for it, because it wasn't till... It's at 10 o'clock. It's supposed to be a 10 o'clock start. They had some problems with the glass that didn't start till about 10:20. So it's now a 6-game losing streak for the Laval Rocket. They'll face Abbotsford again, another late game on the West Coast on Saturday night. And it'll be interesting to keep an eye on the Abbotsford fans. First of all, it's Teddy Bear Toss night in Abbotsford, which is always fun, a great charity. On Friday night, the crowd booed William Trudeau every time he touched the puck from start to finish. And the broadcast, the home broadcast, the play-by-play guy said that unfortunately, Trudeau has a name that's very unpopular in Canada and certainly unpopular with the Abbotsford crowd, so it wasn't necessarily directed at William, but something he had to deal with. Of concern is the way Laval plays defense. They're giving up 81 goals. That's worst in the AHL, and that's not all on their goaltenders. They're just terrible in their own zone.
Absolutely. So the Laval's record currently 5-10-3-1. That's a .368 percentage, points percentage. That's 29th in the AHL, so still right towards the bottom of those standings.
Yeah.
Forward Sean Farrell is out indefinitely with an upper body injury. He was actually pretty good for the Laval Rocket so far this season, putting up 12 points.
Yeah, I thought he looked good. A little bit of a slow start, but he looked good. Suffered that injury during the game in Syracuse that you mentioned.
So Laval has a busier week coming up. Like you mentioned, tonight on December the 2nd, Laval plays in Abbotsford for the 10 p.m. start. And then they head over to Laval on the 6th of December. And then on the 8th of December, they are hosting the Hartford Wolfpack. If we want to take a look at the Trois-Rivières Lions, we've given them a lot of praise throughout this season, and this week things didn't go so well for them. 3 losses on the 25th when they visit Norfolk. They lose 5-2. In South Carolina, a couple days later, they lose 6-2, and then on the 30th of November, they got shut out by Savannah 5-0. So it's looking like Joe Verbetic has struggled a little bit of late. Although before this week, he has proven himself to be a solid ECHL starter. Anthony Beauregard still leads the team in points, but things really coming back down to earth for the Lions.
Yeah, and I think Zach Amond was in that for at least one of those games. Trois-Rivières is having trouble scoring. They've scored 4 goals in the last 3 games and giving up a lot, as you said, 16 goals in 3 games. Coming back to earth a little bit. And part of that, to be fair, is that the Laval Rocket have had injuries and dealt with call-ups to Montreal. So some of those players that have been performing well for Trois-Rivières are now in Laval.
On Thursday, the ECHL announced a brand new franchise starting in the 2024-25 season. They'll be located in Lake Tahoe, and they will be known as the Tahoe Night Monsters. I think that's one of my favorite team names ever. I don't think it makes a ton of sense, but great name, great logo as well, if you wanted to look that up. And currently, I don't see them having any affiliation with an NHL or AHL team.
No, it's pretty hush-hush, but that's Tahoe Night Monsters with night with a K. So pretty safe bet. That they will be the ECHL affiliate of the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas entered into a 1-year relationship with the Savannah Ghost Pirates. Yes, that's a name. They're new to the ECHL this season, but just on a 1-year agreement. So I expect that Vegas will make an announcement that Tahoe will become their ECH affiliate. Just a point of interest that for football fans, former NFL star, not really, Tim Tebow is the owner of the Tahoe Night Monsters.
All right, so Tim Tebow dipping into yet another sport.
Yeah, that's right.
If we want to take a look at the QMJHL, as we have started putting English language coverage on the hockey news for the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. One article that came out this past week is Eagles looking to soar to the top. And Rick, what can you tell us about this one as we continue that coverage?
Jeremy, who covers the QMJHL for us, is doing a team-by-team review of their plans for the trade period in the Q. And this one's about the Cape Breton Eagles and what they're looking to do over the trade period. Trade period will be very active for teams in the Q. If you want to know what Cape Breton's going to do, head to our QMJHL site, and you can look at last week and the coming weeks as Jeremy goes team to team in explaining that. There's also some great articles from the archive of the Hockey News that relate to the Q. There's weekly Team of the Week, Player of the Week. There's all kinds of information for you at our new site.
So if you want to find all our content about Canadiens prospects, you can go to thn.com/Montreal. And if you want to find the best English language coverage of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, go to thn.com/QMJHL. And now it's a time to get to our quotes of the week. And the Canadiens Thursday night versus Florida had a major third period collapse. And that led to 2 quotes that really just made our cut of quotes of the week. I don't think we had any choice but these 2. The first one comes from Caden Primo, and he's talking about what went wrong versus the Florida Panthers.
Second guessing myself, but they got 2 in the same spot and played in my head a little bit.
Not ideal, but you can learn from it.
Not sure. I felt like my glove has been pretty good this year. Yeah, like I said, just played in my head a little bit, and that can't happen. Yeah, you start doing things a little differently, so like I said, you can't do that. When you start second-guessing yourself, things can go south pretty quick.
We've been saying that Caden Primo is not an NHL caliber goaltender, not to be critical, just to be honest, and saying that Caden Primo is not comfortable in his skin when he's in the crease or when he's in front of the cameras, and it's sad. It's really sad. And one of the things, for him to say that the opposition got in his head and affected his game, he said that they got a couple by him all in the same spot. There was actually 5 goals in that game, all in the same spot. And it's just being realistic about your strengths and weaknesses. Caden Primo's glove has always been an issue. We played that quote from him that there was a focus, the work that he's done with Eric Crawford is about placing his feet in the right place. And he said he feels that he's been able to do that this season. But his glove has been weak, and it was in the AHL. It has been this season. If you look at, I think he's let in 19 goals this season. 15 are on the glove side. And 5 in a row in that game against Florida, and that collapse in the third period. It's painful to listen to him. It's really painful, and does he need help? And as I said, Eric Crawford's been working with him and maybe had a bit more time to work with him, given the 3 goalie rotation. But one thing that, and this goes back a few years, when Carter Hart was a prospect, and Carter Hart arrived as a highly touted prospect in the AHL, and our team, the Rocket Sports team, was spending more time traveling back then. And we were in Lehigh Valley, and Carter Hart was there in the bench and in the locker room, and just I took the opportunity to talk to him off the record, and he very openly talked about this psychologist, mental performance coach that he had, and just that it was something that helped him, because my original question that launched all this was, how do you forget a bad goal? And he just went on saying that it's really hard work, that to be an effective goaltender, especially an high performance goaltender in the National Hockey League, you have to forget anything that's happened in the past, and you don't look at what's coming up in the future. You really have to stay in the moment, and that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. Zach Fucali had great talent, but had trouble with that as well. He would leave in his head a great save that he would make, or when he let in a bad goal. And Caden Primo, obviously, against the Florida Panthers, obviously that really affected him. And so I know that the Canadiens have a team psychologist, but this is something that individuals, and we don't know, maybe Caden Primo has someone he works with on the side like that. But goaltending is not only physical, and we've heard that from Marty Braun that he doesn't think that Caden Primo is quick enough, that he has those skills, but he certainly is struggling right now mentally, and I think the pressure is weighing on him, and it's really sad to see.
So our other quote from this past week, it also came after the Florida Panthers game, and it's in regard to someone else who has been struggling quite a bit this season, Marty St. Louis on Josh Anderson.
What's it going to take for this guy to get rewarded?
Josh is back.
You saw it tonight. Josh is back. He fought angry. He's back.
Speaking of angry, Marty St. Louis was angry. When Eric Ingles asked that question, Marty St. Louis just glared at him through the whole answer. You heard that he didn't even let Eric finish he knew what he was going to say. He had that prepared. Ingles didn't even finish his question when he jumped in. Josh is back. He's back. He fought angry. He's back. I don't know that that's exactly what's going to. Maybe that emotional release is going to get Josh Anderson going, but it's been painful to watch. Another player, it's been painful to watch, Josh Anderson, and he's getting tons of ice time. He's getting tons of power play time. You'd think that something would just deflect off a leg or a stick or something. But to have 2 assists, and who hasn't scored a goal yet this year? Kirby Dach, Jaden Struble, David Savard, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, and Jordan Harris, and Josh Anderson. And who's the only player in that list who has played 23 games? It's been difficult, and. Josh Anderson, he has the speed, he has the size, he plays physical, but he isn't doing the right things. It's not even that it's not goal scoring. He's not getting assists either. And especially with all the ice time he's getting, he's really struggling.
So when Marty says Josh Anderson's back, he fought angry. Is Josh Anderson's role fighting? Is fighting against the Florida Panthers a unique thing that not everyone does? I don't particularly think so. I mean, I think everyone gets into fights against the Florida Panthers. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But I don't think that it's fair to say that Josh Anderson is necessarily back, as Marty put it.
Yeah, let him go on a run. Let him go on a run and string some goals and assists together and power play points, and that's when we'll confidently say that Josh Anderson back. This was an angry Marty St. Louis releasing just as Josh Anderson released on the ice in that fight.
Yeah. And as we approach the end of this first segment, we have some hockey news. To start, the NHL announced the return of the player draft on All-Star Thursday as part of the NHL All-Star Weekend. I kind of like this. I remember there being a lot of fun moments coming from this, and particularly one Alex Ovechkin doing everything he possibly could to be the last pick so that he could win a car. So kind of a fun thing that the NHL is re-implementing. Maybe this will help some intrigue with the NHL All-Star Weekend.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. I bailed out of the All-Star Weekend, and adding an extra day to it, it has less and less to do with hockey every year. And I think what made it at least humorous the last time they had the draft is the number of players who were just drunk during that event. It was probably not great for the kids watching on TV, but let's hope that doesn't get repeated this upcoming All-Star game.
Yeah, absolutely. News from the Chicago Blackhawks. Chicago Blackhawks have waived forward Corey Perry and have terminated his contract for engaging in inappropriate conduct. Corey Perry announced later that he would be entering the player assistance program and released a lengthy apology in regard to it.
Yeah, it's tough for Corey Perry, former Montreal Canadian. He was a leader when the Canadiens, especially on the Cup run, things obviously went sideways in Chicago. Chicago, because of the issues with the NHLPA, they could not say very much, but they emphatically said that it didn't have anything to do with the just awful rumors that were out there. This had to do with Corey Perry's conduct at a sponsor event and being under the influence. And so this is good to see that Corey Perry is going to get some help.
And final thing we'll talk about here, there was a game against the Ottawa Senators and the Florida Panthers in which they combined for 167 penalty minutes throughout a pretty feisty game. Lots of scrums, lots of rough play, lots of fights, and the icing on the cake here is this announcement from Garrett Rank.
2 minutes for goaltender interference, 2 minutes for roughing. Florida, number 12, has 2 minutes for roughing, and then every player on the ice has a 10-minute misconduct. Florida will have a 2-minute power play.
I have never heard that in my life. And I didn't even know there was a signal for that. You do the roundabout signal. Everybody on the ice has a 10-minute misconduct. It was brilliant. That was referee Garrett Rank, as you said. This was a bizarre game, bizarre call there, referee's call. But the Tkachuk versus Tkachuk, I'm all for that. And that was fun. Even the chirping that they did back and forth was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you had the whole Tkachuk family in the crowd that night too. You got to see Keith there, which is always nice. I believe Grandma Tkachuk was also there, and I guess that's the style of play that the Tkachuks are accustomed to, right?
Yeah.
So on that note, we'll move off into our first break. We'll hear from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then we'll get to our big topic segment, our quarter season evaluations. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Bet the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. It's hockey season once again, and although I love using DraftKings Sportsbook to enhance and make more fun my NFL watching week to week, it's even more fun when you get in on the action with the NHL and DraftKings Sportsbook. Whether it's daily fantasy, whether it's same game parlays that you're doing on Sportsbook, or whether you're just placing straight up money line bets, DraftKings Sportsbook makes it fun and easy for you to bet the action on the ice. So download the app now and use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. Now that's code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2023. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at The Spinella. With me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. Make sure you're giving him a follow at Rocket Sports. You can also follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can visit our website, canadiensconnection.fm. And just a reminder for those who have not already, or maybe you want to double check this, but please make sure that you subscribe to the Canadiens Connection podcast in your favorite player or on your favorite podcasting app. And like we said, this is going to be a quarter season evaluations as we move into December. The Montreal Canadiens are already playing games in the second quarter of the season. The team finds itself below 500 and 7th out of 8 teams in the Atlantic Division. We've mentioned before that their schedule has really favored them in the early parts of the season. And that brings us to where we are today. And Rick, I think it's time to get to... we'll do this in 3 different rankings. We'll start with disappointments. We'll get to contentment. and then we will get to elation. After that, we'll take a few minutes just to talk about management and coaching highlights. But we'll start things off with the disappointments. And Rick, I think the most obvious one, and we went off about this in the first segment, Josh Anderson obviously is a disappointment. 2 points, 2 assists in 23 games. That's probably the easiest one to get off the board, right?
Yeah, this is, I think everybody agrees. There's no controversy here. Josh Anderson has been a huge disappointment, and it relates to, he's had good line mates. He's had lots of ice time. He's had lots of power play time, and sits after 23 games with just 2 assists, a -6, 29 minutes and penalties, and is projected over an 82-game season to have 7 points. That's not going to happen. Well, at least we don't think it's going to happen, but he's just had a bitterly bad stretch.
Yeah, not much more we can say about that. And with that, I'll let you start off with a couple of your disappointments so far this season.
Mike Matheson. Very disappointed in Mike Matheson. And Rick, why are you so disappointed in Mike Matheson? Because, you look at the goal scoring for the Montreal Canadiens, and you see a Mike Matheson in there. But if you drill down a bit, I don't think there's any debate that he's been dreadful in his own end. Defensively, Mike Matheson was bad last season. He's been horrible so far this season. I don't think there's any debate on that. But, fans and media always talk about his offensive contributions. And okay, but why don't we drill down a little bit into that? And because I don't think it's as rosy either as folks like to admit. He has 17 points. That's third in scoring on the Montreal Canadiens. However, let's look at his 5-on-5 offense. He has 2 goals, 1 primary assist, let me repeat that. He has 1 primary assist this season at 5-on-5 and 2 secondary assists. So he's feasting on power play points. He has 9 power play points right now, but his offense is just negligent on at even strength play. So for that reason, both offensively and defensively, Mike Matheson has been a major disappointment for me this season.
Yeah, I think that's a great choice. I personally didn't have him on my list, but I do agree with a lot of what you said. Did you have anyone else under your disappointment category?
Well, Cole Caulfield, and that's, again, all of these evaluations relate to expectations, and Cole Caulfield was going to score 40, he was going to score 45, he was going to score 50, and Cole Caulfield has been brilliant in scoring game-winning goals in overtime. He has 3 of those. But he only has three of his 7 goals at even strength. And for the longest time, 5-on-5 goals, he was riding 1 goal. So he's picking up there a little bit. But in 23 games, I think more was expected than 3 even strength goals from Cole Caulfield.
Another great choice. And before we move along to my disappointments, is there anyone else you can add to this list?
I'll let you go ahead, and I might chime in on some of the ones that you have identified.
First one I have after Anderson is one Juraj Slafkovsky. And look, I don't know what people's expectations were coming into this season, but I don't think Slafkovsky's even really met that for me. I know in the last few games he's been praised a lot. His play has looked better, and credit where credit's due. I think his skating and the way he handles the puck has started to look a little bit better. But at this point in the season, 23 games in, 2 goals and 2 assists, and that's not enough for me. So I think just not seeing enough from this first overall pick quite yet. I've also not seen enough of a progression too. I'd like to see him be a guy that takes over games. He's just not there yet. Once again, even though he has started to play a little bit better, I still question whether or not he would benefit from some time in Laval.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And what I want to see is him winning puck battles. He's more often than not on the losing side of a puck battle, loses board battles. And for a guy that size, that weight, he should be winning more than his fair share. And I want to see that as we move along this season.
Yeah, it has become just Slavkovsky move to skate towards a puck battle and then just end up falling out of nowhere. So you don't want to be known for that, and I'd like to see him be a little bit better on his skates. Another player I've identified as a disappointment is Caden Primo, and to be honest, I don't know if this is even Caden Primo's fault. I fault management and how they've handled the Caden Primo situation more than I fault Caden Primo himself. I think at this point, at least you and I knew who Caden Primo was as a goaltender. He's had flashes in the AHL, but he's not ever been a top AHL goaltender. And so far this season, he's played 5 games. I think more often than not, he's been the guy who's been a healthy scratch. His record currently, as it's a losing record, actually. Right now, his goals against average is a 3.73. His save percentage is an 8.86. So there you go. I think Caden Primo and how the Caden Primo situation has been managed is a pretty big disappointment for me so far this season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, I saw, I won't say who, but I saw a media member this week saying, tweeting, maybe Caden Primo isn't an NHL goaltender. And I was like, we've been telling you that for quite a while here.
Yeah, exactly. And rounding off my list here, I included one Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Understanding injuries have contributed, but in 13 games, 4 assists, and that's it. Raphael Harvey-Pinard received a contract extension after being called up and being kind of a nice surprise last season. He was able to contribute offensively. He was a good energy guy. This season, I think he's come back down to earth, not really contributed a whole lot. He's not really had a fit anywhere within this lineup. And of course, I think the numbers really back that up.
Yeah, now he's injured. He's been injured for a bit, but he did play 13 games and was on that list of players who haven't scored. I think for Harvey-Pinard, again, one of those players who was probably talked up too much, and it was beyond where his talent is. He's not a top 6 player. He's a player that will give you hard minutes. He'll go to the net. He'll heart of a tiger kind of thing. But people would have expected him to have at least a goal in those first 13 games that he played.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get along to contentment, is there any other disappointments that we should mention along the way here?
I think you covered it.
Perfect. So under contentment, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit selfish this round, so I'll start things off with someone I put in, and that is one Jake Allen. I think Jake Allen said it before the season. He wants more starts. He wants to earn those starts. And I think in the early parts of the season, he certainly played well. He had a great camp. He stole a lot of games early on, games in which Montreal had no business being in, games that Montreal probably should not have won. He was playing out of his mind. Recently, I think he's maybe gone back down to earth and become more what we expect from Jake Allen. But once again, this is a goaltender where when he's in net, it's been against some stiffer competition, and it's been in games where the Montreal Canadiens have not provided a ton of support. So I think coming in contentment is one Jake Allen.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with his performance. As you said, he played out of his mind early on. The Canadiens, unbelievably, in October, were at the top of the league in terms of save percentage, and that was mostly due to Jake Allen. He's where Sam Montembeault gets overly praised. I think people are overly critical of Jake Allen. A lot of the goals that he's given up haven't been his fault, but there have been some soft goals as well. So, but I think he's performed relatively well, and he offers something that none of the other two goaltenders offer, and that's being a mentor, being a good guy, a really good guy in the locker room, and being able to be positive when he speaks to the media.
Yeah, and under contentment, I do have two other players. I'll kind of link them together here. But you actually had these guys as disappointments, so perhaps I'm a little bit higher up on their play, and that's Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. Currently, Cole Caulfield is leading the way in terms of points with 19, Suzuki just behind him with 18. I agree that you do expect more goals from Cole Caulfield. I'm not sure why he has not been able to score more 5-on-5 goals, but he is leading the team. He does have 12 assists, so I'll give him a little bit of a break at the moment. I think this could change by the end of the season, but for now, I will consider myself satisfied with both of these players as they have been the two guys leading the way offensively.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Cole Caulfield was definitely on my disappointment list. I'm fine with. I agree with you as far as Suzuki on the contentment list, satisfied list. He has, he hasn't been lighting it up, but he's a player who we've gotten what we've expected out of him.
Absolutely. And are we ready to get to elation, or do you have one more for contentment?
On my contentment list, I have Alex Newhook, who unfortunately is injured now, but I think that there was a lot of questions about him coming in. I think he's been very up and down, depending for the most part on who he's played with. But I talked about Cole Caulfield and his lack of even strength goals. Well, Alex Newhook, all of his goals have come at even strength, and he's tied for the team lead. So I'd have him right there. Sean Monahan, I also, it was uncertain what was going to happen with him coming back from two serious injuries, and he's helped to make each line that he's been on better. And I would throw in addition to Newhook and Monahan, Jonathan Kovacevic, who I think has been a bit of a surprise, and I had him on my contentment list.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good list, and you start to see where you and I have a little bit of separation in terms of what our lists look like. In terms of elation, I do have two players on my list, but I'll let you take the lead on this one.
The one at the very top of the list is Caden Gooley. And I've mentioned, I think Caden Gooley has emerged as the Canadiens' number one defenseman. We always knew that he would be strong on the defensive side, but there was some question about how he could contribute to the offense. Now, keep in mind that Caden Gooley doesn't get power play time, but I think you've seen quietly that Caden Gooley has taken over the most minutes for a defenseman in the game over the last couple of games, and essentially, although listed in the lineup, it's they are the second pairing, but they've taken over as the first pairing defenseman. That is Caden Gooley and Justin Barron in terms of minutes played, harder matchups. Caden Gooley offensively he leads the team with 6 assists, 5-on-5 offense. Would you have believed that, or would you have thought that was Matheson? Caden Gooley leads the entire team, not just defensemen, in 5-on-5 offense with 6 assists. He has 1 goal, he has 4 primary assists, and he has 2 secondary assists. And compare that with what I said about Mike Matheson having only 1 primary assist at 5-on-5. Caden Gooley has 4, 6 assists total. So I think he has taken over as the number one defenseman. And Justin Barron, we saw that he had a disappointing preseason, sat out initially, and then he's been the second half of the Canadiens' number one pairing. The two of them have played together before, and they look terrific together. And so I would, in my thrilled column, Caden Gooley, head and shoulders above everybody else, Justin Barron, and then I have Brendan Gallagher, who I think has had a bit of a rejuvenation, and he has made each line that he's played with better.
Yep, I like that list. Completely agree with you on Caden Gooley. All I really have to say is he's been the best defenseman on this team the past 2 seasons, and it's not been particularly close. Everything he does is great. I don't think he makes a ton of mistakes out there. And you know what? I'd like to see him get an opportunity on the power play. I think that he's somebody that could develop some offensive talent, but that's not quite how he's been used yet. The only other person I included on mine is one Jonathan Kovacevic. I believe he was on the last category for you, but he's been really solid, and I think a bit of a surprise. He was a waiver pickup last season right at the beginning. Didn't know too much about him personally, but he's come in and he's really found a role. Even going into this season, I wasn't too sure where he would fit in on that defense, but he keeps finding a way to impress, and he's put up 4 goals pretty recently as well, so starting to get his puck moving and scoring abilities going as well. So there you go. Caden Gooley and Jonathan Kovacevic are the only 2 players that I was elated with so far this season.
Yeah, I like Kovacevic too, and you know his before he was picked up on waivers, his season with in the AHL with the Manitoba Moose, he was half a point a game player in the AHL. So he's got an offensive side to him, but we're finally starting to see that come out a bit with the Canadiens.
And now we'll just take a few minutes to talk about the management and coaching and anything that stood out so far this season. I think for me, first and foremost, the management of the 3 goaltenders is what stood out the most, and it's been a pretty big L in my opinion. I think how things have gone with Caden Primo is they've really diminished an asset to an extent. He's been like I said, healthy scratch. When he's been put into games, he's not looked that great. And then the whole carousel with keeping 3 goaltenders along. To an extent, you see Jake Allen, like I mentioned in that first segment, getting the more stiffer competition, and then Sam Montembeault getting a lot of those non-playoff teams and then looking a lot better than he really is. So I think just how the Montreal Canadiens organization in general has handled these 3 goaltenders is it's not been good, and that's really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The 3 goalie situation, why you don't see it in the NHL, it just doesn't work. Doesn't work in practice. It doesn't work in the rotation. And you know, Marty St. Louis was he was asked about it, probably the wrong time to ask him after that Florida game, and he was shaking his head. They asked him when's it going to end, and he said, "I don't know. I'm just taking this week to week." He's upset with it. It's tough for fans. It's tough on the players. And it's not something that I don't think the management has handled it all that well.
Something else I wanted to point out in terms of management and coaching. I think Laval coaching and management has been pretty poor this season too. We've talked about that at length on this podcast as well, in terms of Laval valuing playing their AHL and ECHL veterans ahead of some of their prospects. Strauss-Mann getting the majority of the starts over a Jakob Dobis is a prime example of that. So I've not been too thrilled about what I've seen from Laval and how they've approached developing their prospects. But there is something you pointed out that could be a positive here.
Yeah, I think that I've liked seeing there's been injuries, and the Canadiens management has had to manage those injuries, and I think the quick fan decision, knee-jerk decision would be to call up Joshua Waugh just because he's an exciting prospect, just because he may fit in with a dynamic Caulfield and Suzuki. But as we said a month or so ago on this podcast, leaving Joshua Waugh in Laval, he had a great start, and then he cooled right off to fight through those challenges of not scoring, to find ways of contributing in other ways is all in learning how to be a pro. going on road trips and playing with a lack of sleep. All of that is learning how to be a pro, and he needed to spend the majority of the season in Laval, and I give full credit to the management by not listening to popular opinion and calling him up right away.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. The only other thing that I put on my list here was Jesse Ylönen. I think he's been pretty good. He didn't make the cut on the previous list for me, but I think he's been pretty good. And the reason that he's not made those other lists is, well, we've not seen a ton of him. He's playing less than 10 minutes a night for the most part, and I would like to see more of him. I'm a little bit curious as to why he's not been given opportunities higher up in that lineup.
You're absolutely right. He has very few opportunities, but when he has those opportunities, he's made the most of them. Great hands, a terrific skater, looks like an NHL player. The Canadiens don't have many of those kinds of players. Maybe Emil Heineman, and I mentioned him earlier. He's been out for quite a while, and just back on Friday night for Laval. So you got to give those players an opportunities to, and the other part of it, as a young player, oftentimes it's the defensive game where they struggle. Ylönen is excellent defensively, so really would have liked to see a lot more from him.
Absolutely. And under the management and coaching section, was there anything else that you wanted to add there, Rick?
I think we've covered it.
Perfect. And before we get to the end here, something we wanted to do is just highlight some great moments from this past season. And coincidentally, I think a few of our favorite moments came in the very first game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So if you want to go back, this was the first game of the season. Fans were headed into the season with a lot of high expectations, and in some cases, some mixed expectations. And, well, the first thing that stood out to me and my favorite moment of the season so far was one Arber Xhekaj standing up for his teammate and taking down one Ryan Reeves. Toronto was very excited to bring in one of the toughest guys in the league, and he was going to go help their dressing room. He was going to help the Leafs not get walked over. And there you go. Arber Xhekaj comes in and put that to rest almost immediately, pushing Ryan Reeves down on top of the net and making him look quite silly.
Yeah, and this was, Ryan Reeves was kind of asking for it. He had dished out big hits on, just mentioned them, Ylönen and also Caden Gooley and Arber Xhekaj. You knew this moment was going to come. It was built up that at some point between the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens, Reeves would meet with Xhekaj. And Xhekaj, he handled it. He just handled it, and you could tell how well he handled it by how much Reeves whined after the game that, caught him unaware and all this sort of thing. So well done, Arber Xhekaj.
And I believe there was a line that we had right at the beginning of the season that looked really, really good, and that stood out quite a bit to you. Well,
that game was such a roller coaster, and it ended up in a shootout, but lots of goals and lots of great plays. And one of my favorite plays of the game was Kirby Dach coming up the wing on the boards, passed it in the center to Juraj Slafkovsky, who didn't even think, just immediately dished it over to Alex Newhook for a tap-in goal. Juraj Slafkovsky, he looked terrific as a playmaker on that line. Dach looked great. Newhook got a goal, and we thought, wow, this line, it looks terrific. The three of them together, little did we know that Dach would go out and then Newhook would go out. But that was the moment where you saw the potential of a Juraj Slafkovsky, and he just needs to repeat that moment over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned that Slafkovsky was pretty quick to dish it off to an Alex Newhook. Well, pretty quickly, Slafkovsky did make a little move to get around the defender and complete that pass, and that was something that stood out to me. Where maybe in real time it's pretty fast, but when you look at the replay, there was a little bit of patience from Slafkovsky, and you could see the vision. So I completely agree about that with you. So on that point, you know what? It's been a pretty chaotic first quarter of the season. Lots of ups, lots of downs, a lot of in between for the Montreal Canadiens. So let us know your thoughts. And as we head into our final break here, we want to leave you with our Canadiens Connection question of the week. Can Sam Montembeault be an effective number one goalie for the Montreal Canadiens for the next 3 years? We want to hear from you. And with that, we'll take our final break and then make sure that you stay with us. You were listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal. Your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 272 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out the website, canadiensconnection.fm. Also, remember to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line. It's 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And that was pretty fun going through our quarter season reviews. We felt like we wanted to do things a little bit different than just the old letter grade. Sometimes there are players that just don't really fit in any category, and it's fine not to have to address that, but then give some praise and some disappointment to those that did fit in. And well, this Montreal Canadiens throughout this season, like I've said, they've been pretty hard to keep track of. And if you want to find everything that you need to know, well, Rocket Sports has you covered. Just head over to thn.com/Montreal, and you can find all of the Canadiens coverage in one place. Game day previews, feature articles, prospects, Laval Rocket coverage, anything and everything that you want to know, all in one place. And if you're into more multimedia type content, then head over to our YouTube channel. Subscribe. It's at All Habs. You can pull it up, and throughout the week, we put up several different shows, starting with the Habs Hockey Report hosted by Amy Johnson. The latest episode entitled How's David Reinbacher's Season Going in Switzerland? Also, if you want to keep up to date with the Laval Rocket, Amy Johnson has you covered as well with the Rocket Hockey Report show. The latest episode entitled Which Habs Prospects Stepped Up Last Week? Riley Kidney, Jaden Struble. Amy is a wonderful host. She's very knowledgeable, and she gives you all sorts of great content there. Remember to hit like, leave a comment too, get involved in the conversation, and Amy Johnson loves to interact with all her viewers.
She's a terrific member of our team, and but she shouldn't ask about how Reinbacher's doing, because that really struck a nerve. The comments on that particular video, it reminded fans about what was available at the draft, and certainly Michkov comes up in some of the comments, and the record of Nick Bobroff and whether Canadiens fans trust him or not. Nothing against David Reinbacher, but fans were expecting a little bit more.
Absolutely. And you can also find the Canadiens Connection podcast on YouTube, as we've started to put it on there. The last week's episode entitled Selling Season, Montreal Canadiens Have Assets to Trade. So you might even be watching us on YouTube right now, but make sure that you're subscribed to that. Just search @AllHabs, and you can find all the best Montreal Canadiens content there. Coming up in December, we are going to start doing some watch-along live streams on YouTube. On our own channel, you'll get to see me hosting that, along with a few of my colleagues, both Nathan and Gustav. So we'll keep you up to date, and look out for that. We have a lot of fun there. If you're tired of listening to all the commentators, you don't agree with their takes, you want to have your voice heard, tune in with us. We read out all the comments. We like to engage with everyone and have a good discussion along the way. We have a lot of fun doing these watch-along live streams.
It was lots of fun, the game Montreal against Columbus, and there were some members of our own team that said, listen, I'm tired of listening to Gary Galley. I'm going to the live stream, and the discussion was great. The questions, I thought, from Habs fans were absolutely terrific. You talked about a lot of different issues, and what a great way to watch the game, along with all of the passionate fans that follow us.
So make sure that you're subscribed to the premier Rocket Sports Radio podcast on your favorite podcast app, the Canadiens Connection. You can also find it at canadiensconnection.fm. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens. And as we hit December, that is the end of our Movember campaign. I was involved doing a mustache growing. You saw me on the daily bow tracker. Rick, I believe you're doing some move. But we'd like to thank everyone who got involved, who went and checked out our team page, who left us any donations. This is about raising awareness about men's health just as much as it is about collecting donations.
That's absolutely right. And we've been proud to be involved with that men's charity for the past 10 years, and helping to raise the awareness for men out there to take the time to get themselves checked, and also for those who are going through these issues, and the people that love and support them.
So that brings us to our Canadiens Connection question of the week, and we ask our listeners, can Montembeault be an effective number one goalie for the Canadiens for the next 3 years? Sam Montembeault just signing a brand new 3-year contract extension. Do you think he's going to be worth it? Let us know. We want to hear all your thoughts. I don't want to just hear, yes, it's a steal, or no, it's terrible. I want to hear like a nice explanation from everyone. I'd like to see that everyone puts some thought into this. And Rick, I believe we get a ton of emails and texts and tweets directed towards us throughout the week, and sometimes we like to read out some of those reactions. Most
of them this week were about goaltending, about those folks that support Montembeault that wanted to see Allen get the lion's share, wanted to see Montembeault traded, or wanted to see Primo traded, or wanted to see Primo sent to Laval. There was no real consensus. It was a bit all over the map. But I thought something that was interesting, and this is something that came up last week in our we do winners and losers occasionally. We did that last week. I'm sorry. You had Gary Bettman on your list of losers. On our list of winners, I had Rick Bowness. You had Alex Nedeljkovic. And on my list of losers, I had Marc-Antoine Dequoy, and it was about something unrelated to the game, unrelated to what happened in the Grey Cup. Of course, Montreal Alouettes, winners of the Grey Cup. They're going to be recognized tonight for their 8th Grey Cup championship. They'll be recognized before the Montreal Canadiens play the Detroit Red Wings. And we congratulated the Alouettes for that. But then something happened, and it was Dequoy who had made some comments after the game. I just thought they were divisive comments, and that, there's being a gracious loser, but there's also being a gracious winner, and he didn't need to make divisive comments at that moment to just celebrate the victory. We had a couple of folks that sent us text. One was from Filip in Rimouski. This other one is from Curtis in Laval. And both Filip and Curtis were pleased that we mentioned the event. They were both disturbed by it. Curtis says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Huge Habs fan here and Al's fan too. Your Canadiens coverage is amazing, but I can't tell you how happy I was to hear you call out Dequoy for his keep your English and shove it comments. I was super embarrassed as an Als fan, really put a black mark on the celebration of the Grey Cup." Taking an opposite view is Brad Zuckerman. In his Twitter bio, he says he's a lifelong Habs, Els, and Expos fan. And he said, Habs Connection on Twitter, "I generally enjoy your podcast going back to the Habs 360 days, and we thank you, Brad, for sticking with us. We had a podcast on Saturday afternoon, starting in about 2011, on our website, and we did the Habs 360 for 6 years, and then switched the format a little bit into the Canadiens Connection. So Brad's been with us a long time, has enjoyed the podcast all these years, but says he says that Rick Stevens should stick to limiting his analysis to the Montreal Canadiens. Didn't like my remarks about, he says, the Montreal Alouettes. I wasn't critical of the Alouettes, but about Dequoy, yes, I was. And he thought my comments were off base. And again, stay in your lane. Yeah, focus on hockey, focus on the Montreal Canadiens. I'm all on board with that. We didn't get into any kind of breakdown of the game. I actually said that that in the Eastern Final, Dequoy had played really well, and was one of the major moments in that game. And there, I'm speaking as a fan, not as a football analyst. But as a person who's lived in Quebec and understands the duality and all of that, I think we all do. Anyone who's been here understands that. That the moment for division, there's lots of moments for division, and people can take advantage of that. I didn't see that as just the right moment to do that. And so that's why I made the comments I did. Please some people, didn't please others. And that's what we do. We try to be honest. We try to tell the truth. We don't try to, follow the popular comments. We say it like it is. And I guess that's why people like Brad have enjoyed us for over a decade.
Yeah, so appreciate a longtime listener chiming in and getting into the conversation. We do receive a ton of messages, like I said. We just pick out a few each week to read those on, and we hope to continue to get feedback and thoughts and questions from all of our listeners. Coming up this week, the Montreal Canadiens do have 3 games, starting with tonight at home. They will host the Detroit Red Wings. I believe it's going to be Jake Allen in net, and no sign of Patrick Kane for the Detroit Red Wings as of yet. So unfortunate, we won't see any Patrick Kane there. A couple days off in between. December the 4th, Seattle's going to come to Montreal. And then on the 7th, it's going to be the LA Kings coming back. So a rematch. You get to see Pierre-Luc Dubois as a Los Angeles King suit up against the Montreal Canadiens at home.
Your theory fits, Michael. Jake Allen, Detroit Red Wings are top 10 in the league. Yep. Jake Allen facing another top 10 team.
There you go. So it's not just coincidence. I think there's something to it. So with that, it'll be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. Make sure that you're subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, December the 9th for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.